meeting is being recorded. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, and for everyone who's listening on the replay, thanks for downloading and listening and watching on YouTube, because that is the newest. That is the newest thing. So I thought we could start today by talking about the myth of happiness, because I feel like on week whatever of quarantine that we're in, a lot of people are not happy, and with good reason, right? There's a lot, I think they just reported the new unemployment numbers. There's a lot of stress, just a lot. And so the idea of happiness is closely tied to a lot of suffering, because we feel that we need to have this happiness, we need to have this, and then when life doesn't turn out as we expect, it's like a smash in the face. And so I was looking for something to read to you guys today, and I thought, I wrote something about this, and I don't normally read from my own book, but I'm thinking about doing book club tomorrow, and so I was skimming something, but I was thinking about happiness, and I wrote something about it. So I'm gonna read that here, and then we'll just do a quick grounding meditation, and then meet Celeste. So, okay, this is from, let's see, part 3, Going After the Life You Want. Happiness, the pursuit of. Ask yourself, what makes me happy? Is this a difficult question to answer? I force myself to answer this question often. When I think of the things that make me truly happy, I have a very short list, because to me, happiness means bliss. How much of our lives and day do we spend in actual bliss? How much of our lives and day do we spend in happiness? What gives me these blissful moments? Maybe the turn of magical fall weather, when both of my kids are bathed, smelling like desserts, and snuggling quietly while reading books. A personal record on the race course or in the weight room. Those events evoke happiness in me, but they have one thing in common. These moments are also rare. That's because bliss, what we really mean with the happiness idea, is also rare. Contentment, peace, and calm, that is another story, and that's what we're truly seeking. Those can be daily. Those can even be most of the time if we are truly living. The next question is, when am I content and when do I feel peaceful? And then my list can expand. Sitting with a fresh cup of coffee, cracking open my laptop to work is contentment, peaceful. Working toward the next big idea, closing my eyes at night and knowing that I truly gave the day everything I could, laughing with the kids, sharing a joke, talking about the glory days of weightlifting with former teammates, saving $5 at the store. Contentment is a huge playing field. Contentment is reachable with a change in attitude, a focus on gratitude, a change in our state of mind. We can thrive while we are pursuing that rare, magical happiness, bliss, by enjoying the proximity of contentment. We can be content and work hard pursuing that bliss. We need not be complacent to be content. One of the lies that we have been told is that we deserve to be happy all the time, and contentment is mediocre. While we are all worthy of love and puppies and rainbows, who actually gets that all of the time? The answer is no one. But contentment and peace, we can have that. We can have it starting right now. So, contentment and peace, hashtag goals for the day. So let's just close our eyes if you feel comfortable, and I don't think anyone's driving today. So if you feel comfortable, just close your eyes and let's think about contentment. Contentment, which is not complacency, just contentment. So take a deep breath and let it out. And if you haven't stopped moving today, just think about how nice it is to be sitting still just for a minute. Just breathe at your own pace, whatever feels good. And as we go forward today, you can always come back to this moment where you thought about contentment and take another deep breath and ground yourself. And with your eyes closed, I want to read one more thing. This is from Glennon Doyle's recent book, Untamed. Our deep desires are wise, true, beautiful, and things we can grant ourselves without abandoning our knowing. Following our deep desire always returns us to integrity. If your desire feels wrong to you, go deeper. You can trust yourself. You just have to get low enough. The blueprints of heaven are etched in the deep desires of women. What women want is good. What women want is beautiful. And what women want is dangerous, but not to women, not to the common good. What women want is a threat to the injustice of the status quo. If women trusted and claimed their desires, the world as we know it would crumble. Perhaps that is precisely what we need to happen so we can rebuild truer, more beautiful lives, relationships, families, and nations in their place. Maybe Eve was never meant to be our warning. Maybe she was meant to be our model. Own your wanting, eat the apple, and let it burn. So take another deep breath and let it out. All right, you can open your eyes if you want. All right, I feel better. I can't believe, I don't even know if you guys like doing that, but I do. It makes me breathe for a minute. So I'm very excited about our special guest today. Celeste Yvonne is here. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we start with just telling us your story, and you have as much time as you want to do that. If you have the 5-minute version, that's fine. If you want to talk, and we'll just see where it leads, because you got such a great story.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I am a mom of 2 kids, 2 boys, 4 and 6. I live in Reno, Nevada. I'm married. I grew up in the Bay Area, and I went to school in Boston. So I was in Boston for about 6 years.
Oh, that's where I'm at. Well, sort of.
Yeah.
We're in the burbs. I'm as close as we can live and afford.
I started writing. So I write for work. I do marketing for work, but I started writing personally when I was pregnant with my second child. I had just experienced a miscarriage, and I wanted to write about all these feelings I was having and these worries and fears, but there is this societal expectation that you don't talk about the pregnancy until 12 weeks in. And up until then, I was like, well, I have so much I want to talk about. So I just started writing about it I just created a blog. It was anonymous. And I realized that this is something I love doing from there. And the blog started to build. I started to write for other publications. And now I feel like it's a strong, supportive community, mostly women, but men too, and mostly parents. But about a year and a half ago, I went public with the fact that I have been sober for a year. I had not told anybody about that up until then, not publicly. And as soon as I started to write about it, I got so much feedback. It was overwhelming, but really exciting. I thought this would be like a one-time post, like, hey, guess what? I quit drinking a year ago and I feel great and I will never drink again. Like, that's kind of what the post came out to be. And so many people came back to me saying, tell me more. How did it start? Tell me, what's your story? I want to hear more. So all of a sudden, my blog has become almost in part a sober living and sober parenting blog, and I write a lot about it, and it's been really cool. I've been sober now for 2.5 years. I quit drinking December of 2017. I drank too much. Like, I don't think I ever felt like in my own right I hit a rock bottom, but I was drinking up to a bottle of wine a night to get through parenting, and to just something that was my way of treating myself, but also self-medicating from the stress and the anxiety I was facing as a new mom. And um, as I got older, it started to affect me more in the morning. And I would wake up with these horrendous hangovers to the point where I felt like I couldn't parent effectively. I was turning more and more to the television to parent my kids. And the guilt I felt of doing this and worrying that my kids were still young enough, but as they got older, they were going to start to question this, or they're going to think this is normal. And this is not the life I want them to live. So if I'm going to make this change, it needs to be now. And I came out to my mom and I said, I think I have a drinking problem. And she kind of held my hand and held me accountable from that day forward. Like, we're going to get through this. It'll be judgment free, but I'm not going to let you off the hook. And I stopped drinking after that. And it wasn't until about a year in where I was like, you know what? My life is so much better and more fulfilling. Like, I know that I will never go back. And that's why I decided to go public with it, because it became such an important piece of living a healthier, happier life that I never want to go back. And that's hard for people to hear. Like, even my husband, who still drinks occasionally, he still doesn't get it. It's like, well, I think you've made a point that it's no longer a problem if you thought it was a problem, because it's been 2.5 years. So you could go back eventually if you wanted to, and just learn how to moderate it. And I try to explain, no, that's not how it works.
The people that don't have an issue with it don't have an issue with it. And so they say things like that. They say, oh, well, never, like never. And I'm like, because I'm the same. I'm 4.25 years sober. And I also stopped in December, which is interesting. You said December, because that's such a crazy time to do that. But I always thought that if I can quit drinking over the holidays, I can stay sober. And so that's why I did. And like people that don't struggle with it don't understand. They don't understand. And you kind of have to come to that point when it's a problem. It's just a problem, and you got to be firm in what you are and are not going to do. And so, I've got a husband like that too. He doesn't drink much anymore. Actually, I don't think he's drinking months and months, but he's not willing to be like, I'm not going to agree to never drink.
Right. And I think for my husband, like, he can have a beer and he's like, I'm good. And I could have a beer and leave it at 1. I just never wanted to. Like, that doesn't even sound fun to me.
Right. What's the point? It doesn't taste.
What's the point of that? So then if that is the situation, then I'm better off with nothing. Because honestly, 1 glass of wine or 1 beer was just a tease. So if somebody, and I always tell people, I'm like, if you handed me a glass of wine right now and said, you can drink this and nobody will know, and you can still keep your sober date, I'd be like, I never just wanted 1 glass. So why would I do that? No, thanks.
Right. 1 glass, like, is a joke. I mean, I would prefer to have none, just like that.
Yeah. And I feel better. I don't have hangovers anymore. I mean, the hangovers just got brutal. I mean, I think when you're in your 20s, the effects are just so minimal that you don't even notice for the most part, unless it's a really bad one. And then, I mean, even just after 3 glasses of wine, like, my head would just be pounding. And I'm like, I can't function. Like, I cannot function. And I certainly can't deal with screaming kids.
Right. Right. So let's talk about screaming kids. Talk about screaming kids. So how old are your kids now?
So they're 4 and 6.
Oh, okay.
2 boys. And my older one, he's got behavioral challenges. We're trying to figure out if we're diagnosing him ADHD. We've seen like 4 doctors now, but it's challenging. He struggles in school. He was kicked out of his first kindergarten. He's now at the public kindergarten, and we're trying to figure out next steps because nobody knows how to handle him. Like even the principal's like, I don't know what to do. Looking at me like I do.
Right.
This is my first time doing this too, buddy.
Right.
So they're high energy kids, and parenting in general is stressful enough. And for me, I feel like, but I mean, there's a reason why I turned to alcohol. Like I wanted to self-medicate. I wanted an off switch,
Right.
because this is exhausting. Like even my firstborn was colicky for the first 6 weeks for sure, but about 2 months he started to settle down. Like he has been high maintenance since day one.
Yeah. My son was that way too. And what I've learned, my kids are 11 and 12 now, that I was, and they're 14 months apart, which was
Oh, wow.
brilliant.
Yeah.
But with my son, I, as a mother who was working full time and drinking full time, I did a really poor, and he was a very difficult baby. I did a poor job regulating my own nervous system. And so I did a really poor job co-regulating his. So I have noticed that, and that may be something that might be going on with your son. Like because if we as moms didn't do a good job, and not to say we didn't do a good job, but just like we didn't co-regulate really well because we were flipping out because it was so hard.
Yeah.
Then they pick up on that, because my son got diagnosed with oppositional defiance disorder at age 3. And I refused to accept that. And so kind of proceeded with trying to figure out how to get his nervous system re-regulated and stuff. But it's so hard because we're suffering as moms. Like, what? I did not sign up for this, but yet I did. Oh my God. And then they pick up on that subconsciously. I took my son to a therapist when he was 3, and the therapist right out said, well, what's going on is he has a depressed mother. And I was like, I am not.
How dare you?
How dare you point to me for this screaming child? And then of course, like now, 8 years later, I don't blame myself for it, but it's just like a package that it's like attached to the parenting package. Like, oh, it was an add-on that I kind of didn't do a great job with my own self. So I wasn't doing a good job regulating his. And it's hard to look at that like as one of the byproducts of drinking. It's like, oh, and regret and all of that. But all we can do is move forward and do the best we can. And kids are just a challenge. 4 and 6 is hard. That is hard. I remember my kids that young. That's just like the age they can't say what they want. And
and we're in quarantine together, and they are just constantly fighting. It's endless. And the weather's been really bad lately. So we've been stuck inside for a lot of it. As soon as the spring weather comes out, I'm just knocking them outside and saying, go to town. But being home through all of it just adds a whole nother layer. But at the same time, it has been less anxiety for me with my older son not being in school, because we are dealing with the school situations. I was joking on Twitter the other day, like, I have not had a single call from the principal in 3 weeks, guys. Like, this is a great day, a milestone here. So, there's good and bad with it, but
well, Gretchen has a question. Does it bother you when your spouse drinks? Mine stopped drinking 7 years ago. I'm a 1 beer gal once or twice a week. He says the same. What is the point? I told him it's just like a Coke to me, no biggie. So does it bother you when your husband drinks?
Well, it's different for everybody. It does not bother me because he can stop. I think it would get on my nerves if he was drinking 3 beers a night. But I almost watch him in wonder when he has his beer, because sometimes he'll drink half of it and he'll forget. He'll forget.
Right. Those people.
And I watch him like I'm in a zoo, like watching the animals, because it's fascinating to me. So no, it doesn't bother me. It also doesn't bother me having alcohol in the house, which I know everybody's so different with this. And I think everybody just needs, and also I've heard that over time, people change with what bothers them and what doesn't too. So I think it just depends. The other thing is, my drink of choice was red wine. So if he was opening a bottle of red wine and I was smelling it, that might be more triggering for me. But yeah, you just kind of roll with it and see what works and what doesn't. And I mean, everybody's just so different with what they can tolerate and can't tolerate. But yeah, it's a great question that I think most people, if they do decide to quit, need to figure out for themselves. Will they want alcohol in the house? Will they allow that? Parties at their house, like for the first year, like I was really uncomfortable with having alcohol at parties at my house, because I was like, well, that's not fair. And it's my party, I can decide. But for family members, that upset them and that frustrated them, because it was my problem, not theirs. So, you go with the flow, and over time, what you need and don't need in your recovery and your sober journey is going to be different. So nothing's permanent. And I would say to somebody who wanted their spouse to not drink around them or have alcohol in the house, to tell their spouse that this might not, this might change over time. Like, I'm not saying never again. I'm saying right now, this is what I need from you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can chat, or you can come on video too. So what have you found has been the most rewarding part of being sober?
I think life in general is more fulfilling overall, because I am feeling all the emotions again. I can be more in the moment with my kids. I'm not constantly looking towards the future, towards when 5 o'clock's going to roll around. I think in general, the reward is getting to feel my feelings the way that they were supposed to be felt. I can also trust my own body again. I remember somebody saying, this was a while ago, they were saying, I could tell I was getting sick because something didn't feel right in my body. And as long as I was drinking at the rate I was, I could never tell if I was getting sick or if I was just hungover. I did not trust my own body. I did not trust myself. So anything that was happening in my body, I either was numbing it or I wasn't taking it seriously, because I just didn't know what the primal cause of it was. So being able to feel things inside and know, like, this is genuinely coming from my own body trying to communicate with me, and this isn't from the bottle of wine from last night, has made a huge difference in my life, in my own self-confidence, and in my own sense of in fulfillment. Just being more, you talked about in the beginning of this call about contentment and happiness. And I generally feel more content every day and during the day right now, because I know alcohol is no longer part of my daily lifestyle. So I can feel contentment again. And that's a wonderful feeling.
And where do you fall on the alcoholic spectrum? Like, what are your thoughts on, do you believe that it's a disease? Do you believe that it's a coping mechanism you picked up along the way? I think it's interesting because I run a sobriety group on Facebook, and a lot of people are strict AAers, and a lot of people are like, no thanks. And I just happen to be one who, I don't have a real opinion about what works for everyone, do what works for you. But I don't personally like to be called an alcoholic. Like, I don't like people to call me, like if they write an article about me, to be like, former mom and alcoholic. I'm like, take it out. I don't like that word. So I just out of curiosity, I mean, there's no right or wrong answer, but I just like to know what people, where they kind of fall on that.
I really struggle with the word alcoholic because I think it really limits people from quitting drinking.
Yeah.
And if they think they might have a problem with alcohol, they might not necessarily quit because they don't define themselves as an alcoholic. And that was my case for a long time. My father was, and he would describe himself as an alcoholic. I mean, he was very much like he started drinking in first thing in the morning and he did not stop. That is what I grew up thinking, that's what an alcoholic looks like. So I had all these little rules about, well, if you don't drink before 5 and if you don't drink and drive, then you will not become an alcoholic. But at the end of the day, what I realized is if you have a toxic relationship with alcohol and alcohol is not serving you, then it really doesn't matter what you want to call yourself. So when I tell people like I could drink a bottle of wine a night, a lot of people say, well, that sounds like, you sound like an alcoholic. And I'm like, if you want to call me an alcoholic, I have no problem with that. But I don't think I would go out of my way to say, yeah, I'm Celeste and I'm an alcoholic. Because that doesn't, at this point in my life, that doesn't serve a purpose for me. And that's not a helpful label for me. One of the things that, I mean, the book, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, like changed, restructured everything I understood about alcohol, because she was the first person that I had read who said, you know, it's not so much about the person, it's about the drink. And alcohol is an addictive substance. Some of us are going to become addicted to it quicker than others, but stop looking at this as a genetic flaw and start looking at the drink at hand. And the way that, I mean, the science behind it shows that this is addictive, just like some drugs are very addictive. This is one of the most addictive drugs on earth. And we have to stop blaming the person and be looking more at what this actual substance is. And that really was an aha moment for me, because instead of saying, well, am I an alcoholic or am I not? Did I get this genetic gene from my dad or did I not? I was like, alcohol is just addictive in general. Why would I play with fire, especially if it's not making me feel good? And that really helped me turn the narrative around in my own head and say, it doesn't matter whether or not I'm an alcoholic.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's super helpful. Annie Grace is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way I talk to people about it, I'm like, look, if you know you need to quit and it's not serving you, then pick whatever label you want. I call myself a non-drinker now. Okay. I'm an English major with a law degree and I just call myself a non-drinker. Like that's the best descriptive word I can come with. A drinker, I am not. But yeah, and also I feel like when you choose certain words, you're making it a choice, you know, like you said, if we're going to think of this as a disease that you can't like escape versus no, it's a choice. I choose to not take this highly addictive substance into my body anymore. And I agree with you. Like the first time I had a drink, I was 17 and everything in my entire body lit up. Like I remember I was in South Africa. I was sitting on the floor in this hotel room with a bunch of people and we were drinking margaritas. And I'll never forget like just how everything just exploded. And I was like, whoa, I will need this in my life every day. This is cool. So much better. And I mean, still to this day, I think it's unfortunate I am not one of the people who can enjoy alcohol, but a couple of things that I've learned over the years is I can't. And also, I just don't make eye contact with it. I don't look at it. I don't romanticize it. And it's, it's better that way. There's nothing good for it for me in booze. I proved that for 20 years. So how long, like when did you first start drinking? Like a bottle a day. I was probably a 2 bottle a day, but I'm a lot I think, bigger than you. I had a great tolerance. But like I started doing that to excess pretty much from college on. So when did you start actually drinking heavily?
I mean, I could drink heavily, and I binged in college. You know, it's hard for me to know when I started. You know, I feel like I was following kind of a pattern of the majority of people for a long time until I wasn't. In my 20s, I would binge drink, but it was occasional. It wasn't a daily thing. I feel like I did not reach a point where I was drinking daily until I was in my early 30s, and that's when I started to also notice, you know, the hangover, and then trying to start the parenting journey on top of it. It was just it was way too much. But the first time I drank was in Sweden. I was doing an exchange, a Swedish exchange with, I was staying for a month in Sweden, and then the girl would come and stay with me for a month in the US. And we went to a party in Sweden, and yeah, it was the exact same way that you describe. I had my first drink and I was like, oh my God, like my confidence, this is what it feels like to have confidence, you know, and you're 16 and you're scared and confused, and there's so much about the world that you still don't understand. And all of a sudden I felt like a badass, you know, like, all right, like now I feel beautiful. Now I feel funny. Now I'm smart. I can do anything right now. And I just got, I mean, like I had no concept of even what this was doing to my body. And I got stupid drunk, throwing up at this person's house. And my Swedish interchange student had to call her parents to drive us both home. I mean, it was so embarrassing. And then I probably didn't have another drink again until college. So that was the first time. You know, it felt amazing at the time. It felt horrible the next day. And then I stopped drinking for probably 2 years, for, you know, a couple reasons, but mostly because I had such a bad experience in the long run after a really embarrassing night. But then college, I started back up again, just as everybody else was doing. And nobody drinks moderately in college. I mean, maybe they do. I did not meet those people. But, you know, the frat parties and whatnot was about drinking to excess. So we did a lot of that. And then I met somebody in my 20s who was a very heavy drinker. And I feel like that really altered my landscape moving that was at age 23 or 24. And I wound up getting married to him. And I remember telling him, like in the early days, I'm like, if I knew you drank this much, I don't think I would have started dating you. But he kind of reset this tone in me of what a lot to drink is and what it means to drink. He was the first person that ever told me, have you ever tried drinking alone? It's amazing, you know? And I think who we spend our time with has a significant effect over our drinking habits too. We got divorced when I was 30 years old. And after that, I do feel like some really unhealthy habits and patterns in my drinking took shape thereafter.
Yeah. Well, Gretchen has a question, and I want to understand this term because I actually wrote a blog post about it because someone said that they got tired of Meredith Atwood's dry drunk routine. And I was like, what is a dry drunk routine? And so you mentioned, have you heard the phrase dry drunk? So I still am not sure. And Gretchen, I just unmuted you. I'm still not sure I understand what dry drunk means. Does it mean just someone who's still messed up, but just doesn't drink?
Yes, exactly. The anger still is lurking underneath the surface, the fear, the anxiety, but you just, choose to not look at it. but you're
Yeah.
still the same asshole.
Right. Okay. So I'm still the same asshole as I was. That's funny. I probably am because,
No, I'm
okay,
not
I
saying you are, but I'm just saying that's about your husband, Celeste. That was kind of me and my husband's relationship. We were always drinking, but I just never was a big drinker. He was, and he would say ugly things and in the morning not remember. And yeah, he just decided one day, I'm done. I'm not drinking. But yet I see some of the anger still lurking under the surface. So I don't think he's really worked through, like you have, why and trying to be a better person. He's on
Yeah.
that path now, but yeah.
And what's he doing to get on that path right now?
Well, our kids have really called him out. I didn't have to say a word. And so he's working with a counselor, a
Oh,
male
good.
to male, peer to peer kind of thing. But he didn't go join AA. He will not call himself an alcoholic. He's like, no, I just decided, what's the point? I'm not doing it anymore. I don't like the person that I am when I drink. So
Yeah.
I said, great, don't do it anymore.
Well,
That's one
I know in my case,
into that.
like, I'll just comment here and Celeste, if you want to add to it. But I know with me, like, I hit the wall with drinking, and I thought if I quit drinking, that will fix my problems. And so I quit drinking, and 2 years later, my problems found me. You know, I uncovered the trauma, but what I uncovered was the root, the thing that why I started drinking in the first place. Like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how long has he been sober?
Officially 7 years, but he started
Oh,
trying to do it 3 years before that. So almost 10.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe he hasn't come to the reason he started in the first place, you know, and he's also a male, and without stereotyping, you know, typically as a species are less feeling their feelings, but you know, maybe he knows, and or
I
maybe he
think it was
doesn't.
those first 3 years where he was trying off and on, but the ugly behaviors were still there. And then there was a point where he just snapped. I don't want to go into it, but it was a really rock bottom moment, and
Yeah.
that was enough. He's like, okay, I am done. I've got to figure out why I'm doing this. So I was really proud of him.
Yeah.
And I
But
don't
you
drink
say
in the
he's still
home.
struggling with it?
No, not anymore. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
He's been really good for 7 years, but
Oh,
the first
okay.
three, so
Got it.
it's kind of a 10-year window. The first three he struggled, and then the 7 he's
I
been
see.
good.
I
But
see.
I don't drink in front of him just out of respect. And he's like, no, it's fine. In fact, the other day he went and bought some blueberry beer from one of these local breweries, and he brought it home. And I was like, what are you doing bringing this in the house? He goes, no, it's fine. Like, that's okay. So I'm not going to do that in front of him.
I don't mind when people drink in front of me. I actually prefer it. Like if I go out to dinner with someone who I know drinks and they don't drink because I'm there, I feel stupid. So
Uh,
I hate that. I'm like, please, if you drink, just drink. Like you make me feel like I'm a party pooper.
yeah.
So
Draw
I don't know.
unnecessary attention. You're like,
I
that's
know.
not
I'm like,
good.
let's just point out the addict at the table. She's over there. Don't show her anything that she might snatch out of your hand. So Celeste, were you going to say something? I'm sorry. I think I just ran over you.
Oh, I think, yeah, I mean, I've heard the term dry drunk before. People have called me a dry drunk before because I don't go to AA. So I get frustrated with that term because I think there's different definitions of what that means. And I don't know why by not going to AA, I can't try to find the root of some of the problems in my own way, which I do, you know, through,
You had your AA with your mom.
what's that?
You had your AA with your mom.
Oh, well,
Basically.
and I do therapy, and I see a psychiatrist. So I do a lot of things to work on myself and some of my deeper issues. But it does not involve going to AA meetings, which some people really struggle with. Like, well, how can you quit drinking and not be going to AA? That's never going to work. And I have to manage that because I feel like it's always something that comes up in comments from people. So it's, you know, everyone's just finding their own path.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't made the connection that people tie that to AA, but that makes sense because they're saying you didn't do the work, you didn't do the steps, you just quit. Huh.
Right.
Learn something every day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? Cool. So Celeste, what are you working on right now? Are you doing you got any projects? Are you writing a book? What are you doing?
Oh yeah, there's a lot going on. Well, I was interviewed for InStyle magazine that came out yesterday. That was a really cool article. It was about the benefits of being sober during quarantine. So I highly encourage you to look at that piece because I just love the angle they took. We've seen so many stories about how hard it must be to be sober during quarantine, but this one took a different spin. And I think the reporter just did a really good job with that. I have an agent and we are pitching books to publishers right now. I was just talking to them yesterday and they're like, yeah, basically all publishers have shut down, ordering or, looking into new books, but we're hoping in about a month that'll change.
Yeah, that's probably a bad time to try and pitch. Pitch anything, I would imagine. Or,
I mean, you just showed, or you talked about Glennon Doyle's book. I mean, imagine having a book come out during this.
Oh, I know. I was lucky. Mine hit December 17th. But I have a very good friend who her children's book came out Tuesday. And I'm like, man, this is such a rough time. But Glennon's fine.
She's going to do fine.
I mean,
no, I'm not worried about Glennon.
All right.
In fact, I think in some ways this works to her advantage. Like I was her book and I never would have had a chance to read it if I wasn't trapped at home, So in some ways I think that's really great, but
and that was my theory too, except like for me, my book, because it's operated by a traditional publisher, which is not working right now, and the distribution centers are not working, they're delaying shipments. And so I'm like, oh, everyone go buy my book. And they're like, yeah, it'll be here in May. And I'm like, oh my God, and I'm like, I have boxes, call me, I'll send you my book. Yeah. It's just crazy. Everything is on its head, but I am grateful that I'm, I wasn't trying to do my book release right now. It is tough
during all this. Yeah. So that's what I've got going on. I also, I'm still doing marketing and whatnot. I've got 3 job interviews today and 2 tomorrow. So I'm busy.
Yeah.
The quarantine has not slowed me down.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your time. This was great. If anyone has any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, I think we'll say goodbye and let you get back to pitching books and finding jobs and doing all the things.
Tanya said dry drunk is an AA term. I think, I think that it came from AA. I think that's why I get called it by AA members because I'm not in AA. So anyway, thank you, Tanya, for giving us some insight on that.
Awesome. Well, Celeste, thank you very much for this. Where can people find you?
My handle is the Ultimate Mom Challenge. You can find me on that handle for Facebook or Instagram. And that's my website too, the Ultimate Mom Challenge.
Awesome. Well, thank you, friend. This was great, and stay safe. And I look forward to reading your book in approximately 1.5 years.
Yes. Fingers crossed.
That's right. All right. Well, take care, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.